She never planned to fall for a man whose world was built on blood and secrets. But his daughter saw her heart before he ever did. Claire Dawson sat cross-legged on her apartment floor, a half-eaten container of lo mein balanced on her knee, and a stack of ungraded spelling tests spread around her like confetti. Friday night. Again. Alone. Again. She told herself she liked it this way, quiet, predictable, safe. No one to disappoint, no one to abandon her. But the silence had weight tonight, pressing against her chest in a way she couldn't ignore. Her phone buzzed. Jess, girl come out drinks dancing, living. Claire smiled sadly and typed back. Claire, rain check, tired. It wasn't entirely a lie. She was tired of pretending she wasn't lonely, of convincing herself that being cautious was the same as being whole. She set the phone down and stared at the wall, where a single framed photo hung. Her and her students on the last day of school, their faces bright. With joy, that was enough, it had to be. Across the city, in a penthouse that overlooked Manhattan like a throne over a kingdom, Dante Morty stood in the doorway of his daughter's bedroom. Isabella was already tucked in, her dark curls spilling across the pillow, her brown eyes watching him with that quiet, searching look she'd inherited from her mother. Daddy. Yeah, baby. Why don't you smile anymore? The question landed like a punch. Dante's jaw tightened. He crossed the room and sat on the edge of her bed, brushing a curl from her forehead. I smile, he said softly. Not really. Her voice was small, not like in the pictures with Mommy. Dante's throat closed. He hadn't heard his wife's name spoken aloud in months. He avoided it. Everyone did. Get some sleep, Bella. Will you stay till I fall asleep? He nodded. She turned on her side, clutching the stuffed bunny that had been a gift from her mother. Dante sat in the silence, his hand resting on her small shoulder, and wondered, not for the first time, if he was failing her. He had given her everything. The best schools, the safest home, anything money could buy. But he couldn't give her the one thing she needed most. A mother. A family that felt whole. He kissed her forehead and left the room, closing the door quietly behind him. His second-in-command, Leo, was waiting in the hallway. We have a problem with the shipment. Dante's expression hardened. Handle it. It's not that simple. Then make it simple. His voice was ice. Leo nodded and disappeared. Dante walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows and stared out at the glittering city. Somewhere out there, people were laughing, loving, living lives that didn't require armed guards and endless paranoia. He'd stopped dreaming of that kind of life a long time ago. The next morning, Claire stood in the middle of Central Park, a clipboard in one hand and a walkie-talkie in the other. The annual charity. Carnival for underserved kids was in full swing. Bounce houses, face painting, cotton candy stands. She'd volunteered to help coordinate, and despite her exhaustion, she felt lighter here, surrounded by laughter, by innocence. Miss Dawson, a little boy ran up to her, his face painted like a tiger. Look. You look fierce, Miguel. She grinned. He roared and ran off. Claire checked her watch. 2 more hours, she could do this. Across the park, Dante walked slowly beside Isabella, his hands in the pockets of his wool coat. He didn't belong here. Everyone could sense it. The mothers who steered their kids a little farther away, the fathers who avoided eye contact. But Isabella had begged him. She wanted to be normal, just for one morning. "Daddy, can I get my face painted?" "Sure." She ran ahead and Dante followed, his eyes scanning the crowd out of habit. Threats, exits unknowns. Isabella stopped at the fountain and looked around, her excitement fading. "Daddy." He turned. She wasn't there. His heart stopped. "Bella." He scanned the crowd, his pulse hammering. Then he saw her, standing by the fountain, tears streaming down her face. Relief and rage collided in his chest. But someone was already there. A woman, kneeling in front of Isabella, her voice soft and steady. "Where are you watching from, and what time is it where you are? Drop a comment. I love hearing from you all around the world." Claire knelt in front of the little girl, her heart squeezing at the sight of those wide, tear-filled eyes. "Hey, sweetheart," she said gently. "Are you okay?" The girl shook her head, her breath hitching. I can't find my daddy." "It's okay, that's okay. We'll find him together, all right." Claire kept her voice calm, warm. "What's your name?" "Isabella." "That's a beautiful name. I'm Miss Claire." She smiled and pulled a tissue from her bag, gently wiping Isabella's cheeks. "Your dad is probably looking for you right now. Let's stay right here so he can find us, okay?" Isabella nodded, her small fingers gripping the edge of Claire's sleeve. "Do you like butterflies?" Claire asked, trying to distract her. Isabella's eyes brightened a little. "Yes." "Me too. I have a butterfly sticker in my bag. Want to see?" Before Isabella could answer, a voice cut through the air like a blade. "Bella." Claire looked up, and her breath caught. The man moving toward them was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in all black, expensive black. His jawline could cut glass, his dark eyes sharp and unreadable. But it was the way he moved that stopped her heart, controlled, dangerous, like a wolf in a world of sheep. Isabella's face lit up. "Daddy." She ran to him, and he scooped her up instantly, his arms wrapping around her with a fierceness that seemed at odds with his cold exterior. "What did I tell you about staying close?" His voice was low, edged with something Claire couldn't name. Fear, anger. "I'm sorry." Isabella whispered into his shoulder. Dante closed his eyes briefly, his hand cradling the back of her head. Then his gaze shifted to Claire, who was still kneeling on the pavement, her heart pounding for reasons she didn't understand. He set Isabella down, but kept a hand on her shoulder. "Did you wander off?" he asked his daughter, his tone softer now. "I saw the fountain and I just wanted to look, and then I turned around and you were gone, and—" Her voice broke again. "I wasn't gone, you were." He exhaled, then looked at Claire. "Thank you." It wasn't warm, it wasn't even polite, it was clipped, guarded. Claire stood slowly, brushing off her jeans. "She's okay, just a little scared." Dante's eyes lingered on her for a moment, scanning, assessing. She felt exposed under that gaze, like he could see every secret she'd ever kept. "She didn't leave me, Daddy," Isabella said suddenly, tugging his sleeve. "She stayed with me. She was nice." Something flickered across Dante's face. Just for a second, then it was gone. "Good," he said quietly. Claire offered a small smile. I'm a teacher. It's kind of what I do. Still, he paused, and for the first time his voice lost some of its edge. Thank you. Isabella reached out and grabbed Claire's hand. What's your name? Claire. That's pretty. Isabella smiled up at her, and Claire's chest ached. Dante's hand tightened on his daughter's shoulder. We should go. But I didn't get my face painted yet, Isabella protested. Dante's jaw clenched. He glanced around, too many people, too many variables, but his daughter's eyes were pleading. Fine, 5 minutes. Isabella cheered softly, then looked back at Claire. Will you come with me? Claire hesitated, glancing at Dante. His expression was unreadable, but he gave a barely perceptible nod. Sure, Claire said. They walked toward the face-painting booth in silence, Dante a few steps behind, his presence like a storm cloud. Claire tried to ignore the way her pulse jumped every time she felt his eyes on her. Isabella chattered the whole way, asking Claire about butterflies, her favorite color, if she had any pets. I have a cat, Claire said. His name is Poe. Like the writer. Claire blinked, surprised. Exactly like the writer. My mommy liked books, Isabella said quietly. The air shifted. Claire's throat tightened. She glanced back at Dante. His face was stone, but his eyes, they were somewhere else, somewhere painful. She sounds wonderful, Claire said softly. Isabella nodded. She was. Was. Claire's heart broke a little. They reached the booth, and Isabella climbed into the chair, requesting a butterfly on her cheek. Claire stood nearby, watching the little girl's face light up as the artist worked. Dante stood a few feet away, arms crossed, eyes on his daughter. But Claire could feel the weight of his grief from where she stood. When the butterfly was finished, Isabella hopped down and ran to her father. Look, Daddy. He crouched down to her level, his expression softening in a way that made him look almost human. Beautiful, he murmured. Isabella beamed. Then she turned to Claire. Thank you for staying with me, Miss Claire. Anytime, sweetheart. Isabella looked up at her father. Can we see her again? Dante's eyes snapped to Claire's. For a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them, his dark, unreadable gaze and her cautious, confused one. We'll see, he said finally. It was a deflection, an escape route. But something in the way he looked at her made Claire think he didn't entirely mean it. He took Isabella's hand. Say goodbye. Bye, Miss Claire. Bye, Isabella. Dante gave her one last look, brief, loaded with something she couldn't decode. And then he turned and walked away, his daughter's small hand wrapped in his. Claire stood there, watching them disappear into the crowd. Her hands were trembling. She didn't know. Why? That night, Dante sat alone in his office, a glass of whiskey untouched on the desk in front of him. He couldn't stop thinking about her. The woman with the soft voice and careful eyes. The way she'd knelt in front of his daughter like she was the most important person in the world. The way Isabella had smiled at her, really smiled for the first time in weeks. He hated it. He hated that it mattered. He picked up his phone and texted Leo. Dante, find out who she is. 3 minutes later, his phone buzzed. Leo Claire Dawson, 28, elementary school teacher, lives in Brooklyn, clean record, no ties to anyone in our world. Dante stared at the name. Claire. He set the phone down and drained the whiskey in one swallow. He told himself to forget her. But across the city, lying in her bed, staring at the ceiling, Claire was thinking about him too. The man with the sad daughter and the dangerous eyes. She told herself she'd never see him again. But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. Claire tried to forget. She really did. But for the next 3 days, every time she closed her eyes, she saw Isabella's tear-streaked face. And worse, she saw him. The way his entire body had tensed when he couldn't find his daughter. The way his voice had softened when he looked at her. The grief that lived in his eyes like a permanent shadow. She told herself it was just empathy. She was a teacher. She cared about kids. That's all this was. But on Wednesday morning, when she walked into PS 147 in Lower Manhattan to cover for a sick colleague, she froze in the doorway of the classroom. Because sitting in the third row, with her dark curls pulled into a ponytail and a purple backpack on her desk, was Isabella. Their eyes met. Isabella's face exploded into the brightest smile Claire had seen in years. Miss Claire. She jumped out of her seat and ran across the room, wrapping her arms around Claire's waist. Claire's heart melted and panicked at the same time. Isabella, she breathed, hugging her back. What are you doing here? I go to school here. Isabella pulled back, her eyes shining. Are you my teacher today? Yeah, just for today. This is the best day ever. Claire's chest tightened. She glanced toward the door, half expecting to see him standing there, but the hallway was empty. She exhaled slowly and smiled down at Isabella. Let's get started, okay? Okay. The day passed in a blur. Isabella hung on Claire's every word, volunteered for every question, and at lunch, sat right beside her in the cafeteria. Do you like it here? Claire asked gently. Isabella shrugged. It's okay. I don't have a lot of friends. Why not? Another shrug. I don't know. I think I'm different. Claire's throat ached. Different can be wonderful, you know. That's what my daddy says. Isabella looked down at her sandwich. But I think he's different too, and I don't think he likes it. Claire didn't know what to say to that. At 3:15, the bell rang. Parents and nannies flooded the hallway. Claire helped the kids pack up, her eyes scanning the crowd. And then she saw him. Dante Morty stood just outside the classroom door, hands in the pockets of a charcoal suit, his expression unreadable. But when his eyes landed on her, something flickered, surprise maybe, or recognition. Isabella spotted him and ran. Daddy. He caught her easily, his hand resting on the back of her head. Hey, baby, good day. The best day. Miss Claire was my teacher. Dante's gaze lifted to Claire's. She stood near her desk, suddenly feeling like she'd been caught doing something wrong. He walked into the classroom, Isabella still chattering at his side. Miss Dawson, he said, his voice low and even. Mr. Morty. She didn't know his last name until that moment. She'd heard another parent say it in passing. Italian, of course. Small world, he said. Very. Silence settled. Between them, heavy and charged. Isabella looked between them, confused by the tension she couldn't name. "Daddy, can Miss Claire come over sometime?" "Bella, please. She's so nice, and I don't have anyone to." "Isabella." His voice was firm but not unkind. "Miss Dawson has her own life." Claire's stomach twisted. It was a dismissal, a boundary. And it stung more than it should have. "It's okay," Claire said softly, forcing a smile. "But I'm glad I got to spend the day with you, Isabella." Isabella's face fell a little, but she nodded. Dante's jaw tightened. He placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Let's go." "Bye, Miss Claire." "Bye, sweetheart." Dante gave her one last look, brief, conflicted, and then he turned and left. Claire stood there, her classroom suddenly too quiet, and told herself it was better this way. Whatever that was, it needed to stay buried. But Dante couldn't bury it. That night, after Isabella was asleep, he poured himself another whiskey and stood at the window, staring out at the city. Leo walked in without knocking. "You wanted to see me." "She's at Bella's school." Leo raised an eyebrow. "The teacher." "Yeah." "Coincidence." "Maybe." Dante swirled the glass. "Or fate." "You don't believe in fate." "No, I don't." He drained the whiskey. "But Bella does." Leo leaned against the desk. "She asked about her again." "Every night." "And?" Dante turned to face him. "And nothing. She's a school teacher, Leo. She doesn't belong in this world." "Then why are we talking about her?" Dante didn't answer. Leo sighed. "Look, I get it. Bella needs more than just you. But bringing someone in, especially someone like her, it's risky. For everyone." "I know." "So what are you gonna do?" Dante set the glass down. "Nothing." Leo didn't look convinced. "You sure about that?" "Yeah." Dante's voice was flat, final. "I'm sure." But even as he said it, he knew he was lying. Claire didn't see them again for 5 days. She went back to her regular classroom, buried herself in lesson plans and parent-teacher conferences, and tried to convince herself she wasn't disappointed. But on Friday night, when she stopped by the small corner market near her apartment to grab milk and cereal, she saw her. Isabella, standing in the candy aisle, alone, staring up at the rows of chocolate bars like they held the answers to the universe. Claire's heart skipped. She glanced around. No sign of Dante. She approached slowly. "Isabella." The little girl turned and her face lit up. "Miss Claire." "Hey, sweetie, what are you doing here?" "Daddy's getting stuff. He said I could pick one candy." She bit her lip. "But I can't decide." Claire smiled. "That's a tough choice." "What's your favorite?" Probably peanut butter cups." Isabella's eyes widened. "Me too." "Then I think you have your answer." Isabella grabbed a pack and grinned. "Bella." The voice came from behind them, low, familiar, and laced with something Claire couldn't name. She turned. Dante stood at the end of the aisle, a basket in one hand, his eyes locked on Claire. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Miss Claire's here," Isabella announced, oblivious to the tension. "I see that," Dante said quietly. Claire swallowed. "I was just..." Helping her pick candy, I know. His gaze didn't waver. You're good at that. It wasn't an insult, but it wasn't quite a compliment either. Isabella tugged his sleeve. Can Miss Claire have dinner with us? Bella. Please, Daddy, just this once. Dante's jaw worked. He looked at Claire, and for a split second she saw it, the war he was fighting with himself. I don't want to intrude, Claire said quickly. You're not, Isabella insisted. Dante exhaled through his nose. Then, against every instinct he had, he said, It's just spaghetti, nothing fancy. Claire blinked. You're sure? No, he said honestly, but she is. Isabella beamed. And despite every alarm bell ringing in her head, Claire heard herself say, Okay. The penthouse was nothing like Claire expected. She'd imagined cold, sterile luxury, all marble and chrome, a showpiece with no soul. But as the private elevator doors slid open and she stepped inside, she realized she'd been wrong. Yes, it was massive. Yes, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline were breathtaking. But there were also toys scattered near the couch. A bookshelf stuffed with children's stories, crayons on the coffee table, a blanket fort half collapsed in the corner. It was a home, a lived-in one. Sorry about the mess, Dante said, setting his keys on the counter. His voice was still guarded, but there was a thread of something softer beneath it. It's not a mess, Claire said. It's perfect. Isabella grabbed her hand. Come see my room. Bella, let her breathe, Dante called after them. But Isabella was already dragging Claire down the hall. Her room was painted soft lavender, with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling and a shelf full of stuffed animals. But what caught Claire's attention was the wall of photographs. Isabella as a baby, a beautiful woman with dark hair holding her, and Dante, younger, smiling in a way Claire hadn't seen yet. That's my mommy, Isabella said quietly. Claire's chest tightened. She's beautiful. Daddy says I look like her. You do. Isabella sat on the edge of her bed, her legs swinging. Do you think she can see me? From heaven? Claire knelt in front of her, her throat thick. I think if love can go anywhere, it goes there. So yeah, I think she sees you every day. Isabella's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. I like that. Me too. They sat there for a moment, quiet and connected in a way that didn't need words. Then Dante's voice came from the doorway. Dinner's almost ready. Claire turned. He was leaning against the frame, arms crossed, watching them with an expression she couldn't read. Okay, Daddy, Isabella said, hopping off the bed. She skipped past him, and Dante's eyes stayed on Claire. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For saying the right thing. Claire stood. I meant it. His gaze held hers for a beat too long. Then he nodded and turned away. Dinner was surprisingly easy. Dante cooked, actual homemade spaghetti with marinara sauce that smelled like it had been simmering for hours. Isabella set the table with exaggerated care, narrating every placement of forks and napkins. And Claire just tried not to stare at the man across from her, whose hands moved with unexpected grace as he plated the food. You cook? She asked, unable to hide her surprise. Surprised. A little. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. My grandmother taught me, said a man who can't feed himself isn't a man. She sounds wise. She was. They ate in. Comfortable silence, Isabella filling the gaps with stories about school, her favorite books, a bird she saw on the way home. Dante listened to every word, and Claire realized something. He wasn't just a good father, he was a devoted one. After dinner, Isabella yawned. "Bedtime," Dante said. "But Miss Claire's still here. And she'll be here when you say goodnight." Isabella looked at Claire with hopeful eyes. "Will you read me a story?" Claire glanced at Dante. He gave a small nod. "I'd love to." 20 minutes later, Claire sat on the edge of Isabella's bed, reading Where the Wild Things Are in a soft voice. Isabella's eyes grew heavier with each page, and by the time Max returned home to find his supper waiting, she was asleep. Claire closed the book carefully and stood. Dante was in the doorway again. How long had he been there? She walked past him into the hallway, and he pulled the door almost shut, leaving it cracked. "She's out," Claire whispered. "She likes you." "I like her too." They stood in the dim hallway, too close and not close enough. "Can I ask you something?" Claire said. "Maybe." "Why did you really invite me to dinner?" Dante's jaw tightened. He looked away, then back. "Because she asked, and I can't say no to her." "That's it." His dark eyes met hers, and the air between them shifted. "No," he admitted, "that's not it." Claire's breath caught. Before either of them could say more, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor changed. The warmth vanished. His face became a mask. "I have to take this." "Okay." He walked toward his office, phone already at his ear, his voice low and clipped. Claire stood in the hallway, her heart pounding. She should leave. She should grab her coat and go. But she didn't. 5 minutes later, Dante emerged. He looked tired. "Everything okay?" Claire asked. "It's handled." That's not an answer. He stopped, surprised. Most people didn't push him. "No," he said quietly, "it's not." Claire studied him. "You don't have to tell me, but you also don't have to pretend." Something in his expression cracked. He crossed the space between them, stopping just a foot away. "You don't know what you're walking into here," he said, his voice low. "Then tell me." "I can't." "Why?" "Because the less you know, the safer you are." Claire's pulse hammered. Safer from what? Dante didn't answer, but his eyes said everything. Oh, she should have been scared. She should have run. But instead, she stayed. "I should go," she whispered. "Yeah, you should." Neither of them moved. Then Dante's phone rang again. He cursed it under his breath and stepped back. "I'll have my driver take you home." "I can take the subway." "No," his voice was firm. "You can't." It wasn't a suggestion. Claire nodded. 10 minutes later, she was in the back of a black SUV, the city lights streaking past. Her window, her mind spinning. When she got home, she sat on her couch in the dark and realized something terrifying. She didn't want to stay away. The next morning, Dante's phone rang at 6 a.m. It was the school. Isabella's regular nanny, Mrs. Alvarez, had quit. No notice, no explanation, just gone. "Damn it," Dante muttered. Leo walked in with coffee. "Problem. I need someone to watch Bella. Now. I'll make some calls." "No," Dante's voice was sharp. "Everyone you'd call is connected to us. I don't want that near her." "Then what do you want?" Dante stared at his phone. At Claire's number, which he'd gotten from the school directory. "I want someone she trusts," he said quietly. Leo's eyebrows shot up. "You're not serious." "She's a teacher. She's cleared. Bella loves her." "She's also not part of this world, Dante. You bring her in. You can't protect her the way you think you can." "I know." "Then why?" Dante didn't answer. He just dialed. Claire was grading papers when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But something made her pick up. "Hello." "It's Dante Morty." Her heart stopped. "Hi. I need to ask you something, and you can say no." "Okay." He exhaled. "Bella's nanny quit. I need someone I can trust, someone she trusts." Claire's mouth went dry. "You want me to watch her?" "Temporarily, just until I find someone permanent. I'll pay you, whatever you want." "It's not about money." "Then what's it about?" Claire closed her eyes. She should say no. This was a line she shouldn't cross. But all she could see was Isabella's face, her loneliness, her hope. "When do you need me?" she asked. Dante's relief was audible. "Tonight." 3 weeks passed like a dream Claire wasn't sure she wanted to wake from. Every evening after her teaching day ended, she took the subway to the penthouse. She helped Isabella with homework, made her dinner, played. Endless rounds of go fish, and read bedtime stories until the little girl's eyes fluttered closed. And every night, sometime between 8 and 10, Dante would come home. He'd walk in, still wearing his suit, exhaustion carved into the lines of his face. But the moment he saw Isabella asleep on the couch, her head in Claire's lap, something in him would soften. They developed a rhythm. Claire would ease out from under Isabella. Dante would carry his daughter to bed. And then, almost against both their better judgments, they'd sit on the terrace with tea or wine and talk. Not about his work, never about that. But about books, childhood memories, the kind of small, sacred things people share when they're building trust brick by careful brick. Claire learned that Dante's grandmother had raised him in Brooklyn after his parents died, that he'd put himself through college, that he spoke 3 languages and had once wanted to be an architect. "What happened?" she asked one night. His jaw tightened. "Life." She didn't push. And Dante learned that Claire had grown up in foster care, that she'd aged out of the system at 18 with nothing but a scholarship and a stubborn belief that she could make something of herself, that she became a teacher because she wanted to be the adult she'd needed as a child. "Is that why you never talk about family?" he asked quietly. "There's nothing to talk about," she said. "I don't have one." The sadness in her voice made his chest ache. "You do now," he said before he could stop himself. Her eyes snapped to his. He cleared his throat, looking away. "Bella, I mean, she thinks of you that way." "Right," Claire whispered. "Bella." But the way he looked at her said it wasn't just Bella. It was a Friday night when everything changed. Claire had put Isabella to bed early. She'd been tired from a school field trip. Dante wasn't home yet, so Claire wandered into the living room, a mug of tea in her hands. That's when she saw it. A photo album on the side table, half hidden beneath a stack of magazines. She knew she shouldn't, but curiosity and something deeper pulled her forward. She sat on the couch and opened it. The first page took her breath away. A wedding photo. Dante, younger but just as intense, standing beside a woman in a white dress. She was radiant, dark-haired, bright-eyed, glowing. Claire's throat tightened. She turned the page. More photos. The woman pregnant, laughing. Dante's hand on her belly. Then Isabella as a newborn, cradled between them. They looked so happy. So whole. Claire turned another page and froze. It was a newspaper clipping, folded and tucked between the plastic sleeves. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. Local woman killed in hit and run. Police suspect foul play. The photo was of her, Dante's wife. Claire's stomach dropped. She read further. Sophia Morty, 29, was killed late Tuesday evening while leaving a charity gala in Manhattan. Witnesses say a black sedan struck her vehicle at high speed before fleeing the scene. Authorities have not ruled out the possibility that the crash was intentional. Mrs. Morty is survived by her husband, Dante Morty, and their daughter, Isabella, age 3. Claire's hands shook. Intentional. She looked up, and her heart stopped. Dante was standing in the doorway. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were full of pain. "I'm sorry," Claire stammered, setting the album down like it had burned her. "I didn't mean to, I shouldn't have." "It's fine," he said quietly. But it wasn't fine. He crossed the room slowly and sat beside her, his shoulders heavy. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Dante reached out and touched the edge of the newspaper clipping. "They never found who did it," he said, his voice hollow. "No arrests, no leads, just gone." "Dante, I know what people think, that it was random. Wrong place, wrong time." He looked at her and his eyes were raw. But it wasn't. Claire's breath caught. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. "I mean she died because of me, because of what I do, who I am." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do," his voice cracked. "She wanted out, wanted me to leave the life, start over somewhere clean. I told her I would, I promised." He swallowed hard. "But I didn't move fast enough, and someone sent a message." Claire's heart shattered. "They took her from me," Dante whispered. "And from Bella, and I will never forgive myself for that." Without thinking, Claire reached out and took his hand. He flinched, but he didn't pull away. "It wasn't your fault," she said firmly. "You don't know what I've done." "I don't need to. I know who you are now. I see how you love your daughter, how hard you're trying." His eyes glistened. "I'm failing her, Claire. She needs more than I can give." "That's not true." "She needs a mother." The words hung in the air like a confession. Claire's throat tightened. "She needs love, and she has that from you." Dante turned to look at her fully, and the intensity in his gaze made her dizzy. "And from you," he said quietly. Her heart slammed against her ribs. "Dante, I know I shouldn't have brought you into this. It was selfish, dangerous." He exhaled shakily. "But I can't let you go." Claire's breath hitched. "Why?" "Because when you're here, I remember what it feels like to be human." His voice broke. "And so does she." Tears blurred Claire's vision. She didn't know who moved first. But suddenly, his hand was on her cheek, and her forehead was pressed to his, and they were breathing the same air. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I." "Your world." "I know. I don't belong in it." "I know." His thumb traced her jaw. "But maybe you belong here anyway." And then, slowly, so slowly she could have stopped it, he kissed her. It was soft, tender, devastatingly gentle. And it felt like everything she'd been running from, and everything she'd been searching for all at once. When they pulled apart, her hands were shaking. "What are we doing?" she breathed. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I don't want to stop." Neither did she. They sat there on the couch, his arm around her, her head on his shoulder, the city lights glittering beyond the windows. For the first time in years, Dante felt something other than guilt. And for the first time in her life, Claire felt like she belonged somewhere. But in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered a warning she couldn't ignore. This kind of happiness never lasts. Where are you watching from right now? And what do you think is going to happen next? Drop a comment. I read every single one. The next 2 weeks felt like living in a snow globe, beautiful, fragile, and somehow separate from the rest of the world. Claire still came every evening, but now, when Dante came home, there was no pretense, no careful distance. He'd walk through the door, and Isabella would run to him, chattering about her day. And then his eyes would find Claire's across the room, and something warm and unspoken would pass between them. They hadn't kissed again, not yet. But the wanting was there, humming beneath every glance, every accidental touch, every moment they found themselves alone. It was a Saturday afternoon when Dante did something he hadn't done in 4 years. He took the day off. "We're going to Coney Island," he announced at breakfast. Isabella's eyes went wide. "Really? Really?" She looked at Claire, who was flipping pancakes at the stove. "Is Miss Claire coming?" Dante's gaze slid to her. "If she wants to." Claire's heart squeezed. She turned, spatula in hand, and saw the question in his eyes. Not just for Isabella, for him. "I want to," she said softly. Isabella cheered. And Dante smiled, really. Smiled, for the first time since Claire had met him. The boardwalk was alive with music, laughter, and the smell of fried dough and salt water. Claire hadn't been to Coney Island since she was a teenager, and the nostalgia hit her hard. Isabella held both their hands as they walked, swinging between them like a bridge. "Can we ride the cyclone?" she asked, eyes sparkling. Dante raised an eyebrow. "You sure you're tall enough?" "I'm brave enough." Claire laughed. "She's got you there." He looked at Claire, amusement flickering in his eyes. "You ever been on it?" "Once," I screamed the whole time. "Good, then you're riding with her." "What, no." But Isabella was already tugging her toward the line, and Dante followed, hands in his pockets, a rare lightness in his step. Claire did scream. So did Isabella, but hers were shrieks of pure joy. When they stumbled off the ride, breathless and dizzy, Dante was waiting at the exit with 2 bottles of water and a smirk. "You look like you survived a war," he said. "I did," Claire gasped, laughing. "A war against gravity." Isabella grabbed his hand. "Daddy, you have to go next time." "Not a chance." "You're scared," Claire teased. His eyes glinted. "I'm strategic." That's a fancy word for scared. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You want to test that theory?" Her pulse jumped. "Maybe." Isabella tugged them toward the game booths, oblivious to the tension crackling between the adults. An hour later, Dante had won Isabella a stuffed unicorn the size of her torso by throwing baseballs at stacked bottles with unnerving precision. "Show off," Claire muttered. "Jealous?" he asked, the corner of his mouth lifting. "Competitive." "Then pick a game." She scanned the boardwalk and pointed. "That one." It was the water gun race, the kind where you spray a target to make a horse move forward. Dante raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" "Scared," she challenged, echoing his earlier words. His eyes darkened with playful intent. "You're going to regret this." They sat side by side, Isabella cheering from behind them. The bell rang, and they both grabbed their guns. Claire had no idea what she was doing, but she didn't care. She laughed so hard she could barely aim, and when Dante's horse crossed the finish line first, she wasn't even mad. He turned to her, triumphant, and she shoved his shoulder. "You're insufferable. And you're a sore loser. I let you win." "Sure you did." Their faces were inches apart, both breathless, both grinning like idiots. Isabella's voice cut through the moment. "Daddy, can we get ice cream?" Dante blinked, stepping back. Yeah, let's get ice cream." But as they walked toward the stand, his hand brushed Claire's. And this time, he didn't pull away. His fingers laced through hers. Claire's heart stumbled. She looked up at him, surprised, searching. He didn't say anything, just kept walking, his thumb tracing slow circles on the back of her hand. Isabella skipped ahead, oblivious. And for a few stolen minutes, they were just a family on the boardwalk. That night, after Isabella had fallen asleep in the car on the way home, Dante carried her to bed while Claire tidied up the living room. When he came back out, he found her standing by the window, arms wrapped around herself, staring out at the skyline. "Hey," he said softly. Oh, she turned. "Hey." He crossed the room slowly. "Thank you for today." "You don't have to thank me." "I do." He stopped in front of her. "I can't remember the last time I felt." "What?" "Normal," he said quietly. "Like I wasn't carrying the weight of everything I've done." Claire's chest ached. "You deserve to feel that way." "I don't know if I do." "I do." His eyes searched hers, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "Claire." "Yeah." "I need you to know something." Her breath caught. "Okay." "This, whatever this is, it's real for me." His voice was rough, honest. "I'm not good at this, at letting people in, but you make me want to try." Tears pricked her eyes. It's real for me, too. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. Then he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. This time, it wasn't soft. It was desperate, hungry, like he'd been starving and she was the first real thing he'd tasted in years. Claire's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and he responded by wrapping his arms around her waist, lifting her slightly off the ground. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "I don't want to mess this up," he whispered against her forehead. "Then don't," she whispered back. He pulled her into his chest, and she let herself sink into him. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Claire felt safe. But across the city, in a dimly lit restaurant in Little Italy, a man in an expensive suit listened to a report from his associate. Morty's been distracted, spending time with some woman, a nobody, a teacher. The man swirled his wine, his expression cold. "A weakness," he said quietly. "You want us to move on it." The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Not yet. Let him get comfortable. Let him think he's safe. And then we remind him what happens when you let your guard down." He raised his glass. "To leverage." Back at the penthouse, Claire and Dante sat together on the couch, her head on his shoulder, his hand in her hair. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. In that moment, the world outside didn't exist. But it was waiting. And it was patient. It happened on a Tuesday. Claire had just finished reading Charlotte's Web to Isabella, who was fighting sleep with everything she had. 5 more minutes, Isabella pleaded, her eyes already half closed. "You said that." 10 minutes ago, Claire whispered, brushing curls from her forehead. "But I'm not tired." "Yes, you are." Isabella yawned, betraying herself. "Okay, maybe a little." Claire smiled and kissed her forehead. "Good night, sweetheart." "Night, Miss Claire." Isabella's voice was already drowsy, then barely audible. "I love you." Claire's breath caught. She hadn't expected it, hadn't prepared for the way those 3 words would crack her chest wide open. "I love you too," she whispered. By the time she stood, Isabella was asleep. Claire stepped into the hallway, closing the door gently behind her, and nearly collided with Dante. He steadied her with his hands on her arms. "She asleep?" he asked. "Yeah," Claire's voice was thick. He noticed immediately. "You okay?" "She said she loves me." Dante's expression softened. "She does." Claire shook her head, smiling through the sting of tears. "I didn't expect it to hit me that hard." Dante pulled her into his arms. Without a word. She melted into him, and for a moment, everything felt right. "I have to step out for a couple hours," he murmured into her hair. "Business. Leo's downstairs if you need anything." Claire pulled back, searching his face. "Is everything okay?" "It's fine, just a meeting." He kissed her forehead. "I'll be back before midnight." "Promise." "Promise." He grabbed his coat and left. And Claire stood in the quiet penthouse, uneasy in a way she couldn't explain. She tried to distract herself. She graded papers, made tea, scrolled through her phone. But the unease grew. At 10:47, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Unknown, you seem like a smart woman. So let me give you some advice. Get out while you still can. Claire's stomach dropped. Her fingers trembled as she typed back. Claire, who is this? 3 dots appeared. Then, unknown, someone who knows what Dante Morty really is, and what happens to people who get too close. Her blood ran cold. Another message came through. This time, it was a photo. Claire's breath caught. It was a picture of her leaving the penthouse that morning. She hadn't noticed anyone following her. Unknown, you think you're special. You're not. You're just the next name on a very long list. Ask him about the people he's destroyed. Then ask yourself if you really want to be next. Claire's hands shook so badly, she nearly dropped the phone. She wanted to dismiss it, to believe it was a cruel prank. But the photo was real. Someone had been watching her, and they wanted her to know it. At 11:38, Dante walked through the door. Claire was sitting on the couch, arms wrapped around herself, her face pale. He knew immediately something was wrong. Claire. She looked up, and the fear in her eyes stopped him cold. What happened? She held out her phone. He took it, his jaw tightening as he read the messages. When he saw the photo, his entire body went rigid. Who sent this? His voice was deadly calm. I don't know. He scrolled through the thread again, his mind already racing through possibilities. Then he pulled out his own phone and texted Leo. Dante, trace this number, now. He looked back at Claire. Did they call, say anything else? No, just that. Her voice cracked. Dante, who would do this? He knelt in front of her, his hands on her knees. Someone trying to scare you. Well, it worked. Claire. They were following me, her eyes filled with tears. They know where I live, where I work. They know about us. I will find out who did this, and I will handle it. That's not the point. She stood abruptly, pulling away from him. The point is that this is your world. This is what happens when people get close to you. They get threatened, or worse. Dante stood slowly, his expression unreadable. You think I don't know that? Then why did you let me in? Her voice broke. Why didn't you just keep me away? Because I couldn't, he shot back, his control slipping. Because for the first time in 4 years, I had something worth protecting besides my daughter, and I was selfish enough to take it. Tears streamed down Claire's face. I can't do this. His face went white. What? I can't be part of this, Dante. I'm not strong enough. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. She wrapped her arms around herself, trembling. I teach second graders. I live in a rent-controlled apartment. I don't know how to exist in a world where people send threatening messages just to prove a point. So what are you saying? She looked at him, her heart shattering. I'm saying I need to leave. The silence that followed was deafening. Dante's jaw worked. His hands curled into fists at his sides. You're running, he said quietly. I'm surviving. You're running, he repeated harder this time, just like everyone else. That's not fair. Isn't it? His voice was cold now, all the warmth drained out. You said this was real. You said you weren't going anywhere. I didn't know what I was signing up for. And now you do, so you're leaving. He laughed bitterly. At least you lasted longer than most. Dante. Go. His voice was flat, final. Claire froze. What? You want out. Fine, get out. He turned away from her, his shoulders rigid. I won't stop you. Don't do this, she whispered. Do what? Give you exactly what you asked for. I didn't. You did. He still wouldn't look at her. And you're right, you don't belong here. The words hit like a slap. Claire stood there, tears streaming down her face, waiting for him to take it back. But he didn't. He just stood there, his back to her, every line of his body screaming pain he refused to show. I'm sorry, she whispered. He didn't respond. So she grabbed her coat and bag with shaking hands. She stopped at the door, looking back one last time. Tell Isabella I'm sorry, too. Dante's shoulders tensed. But he still didn't turn around. Claire opened the door and left. The moment the elevator doors closed, Dante's knees buckled. He braced himself against the wall, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He'd pushed her away. He'd done exactly what he swore he wouldn't do. But it was better this way. Safer. He kept telling himself that. Even as his heart shattered into pieces, he knew he'd never put back together. Across town, Claire sat on the subway, tears streaming silently down her face. Her phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown number. Unknown, smart girl. She turned off her phone and stared at her reflection in the dark window. She'd done the right thing. She'd protected herself. So why did it feel like the worst mistake of her life? In the penthouse, Isabella's door creaked open. She padded into the living room, rubbing her eyes. Daddy. Dante turned, quickly wiping his face. Hey, baby, what are you doing up? I heard the door close. She looked around. Where's Miss Claire? Dante's throat closed. She had to go home. Is she coming back tomorrow? He couldn't answer. Isabella's face crumpled. Daddy. He knelt down and pulled her into his arms. I don't know, sweetheart, he whispered. And for the first time since his wife died, Dante Morty broke. Claire didn't sleep. She lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every word, every look. You don't belong here. He'd said it like a fact, cold, definitive. And maybe he was right. But if that was true, why did leaving feel like ripping out her own heart? By 6 a.m., she gave up on sleep. She made coffee she didn't drink and sat by the window, watching the city wake up. Her phone sat on the table, still off. She was afraid to turn it on, afraid of more messages, afraid there'd be nothing at all. At 7:30, there was a knock on her door. Claire's heart leapt. She rushed to the door, hope flooding her chest. But when she opened it, it wasn't Dante. It was a woman, mid-40s, stylish, with sharp eyes and an expression that was hard to read. Claire Dawson. Yes. The woman extended a hand. My name is Angela Romano. I'm an old friend of Sophia Morty. Claire's breath caught. Dante's wife. Yes, Angela's expression softened. May I come in? Claire hesitated, then stepped aside. They sat across from each other in Claire's tiny living room, steam rising from 2 mugs of tea neither of them had touched. "How did you find me?" Claire asked. "I have my ways," Angela smiled faintly. "And I've been keeping an eye on Dante since Sophia died, making sure he doesn't self-destruct. Why are you here?" Angela leaned forward, her gaze direct. "Because I heard what happened last night, and I know you left." Claire's throat tightened. "How?" "Like I said, I keep an eye on things." Angela paused. "I also know you received threatening messages." Claire looked down. "Someone wants me gone." "Yes, and they used fear to make it happen." Angela's voice turned hard. "They knew exactly what button to push." "So it worked. I'm gone. What does it matter?" "It matters because you're miserable. And so is he. And so is that little girl who's been asking for you nonstop since you left." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I can't go back." "Why not?" "Because I'm not brave enough for his world." Angela studied her for a long moment. Then she said something Claire didn't expect. "Sophia wasn't either." Claire looked up, startled. "She was a kindergarten teacher," Angela continued. "Sweet, gentle, completely out of her depth when she fell in love with Dante." She smiled sadly. "But she loved him anyway, and he loved her enough to try to change, to build a life that could hold both worlds." "But she died," Claire whispered. "She did." Angela's voice was heavy. "And Dante blames himself. He thinks love made him weak, made him careless." "Maybe it did. Or maybe it made him human." Angela leaned closer. "Claire, I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I am here to tell you the truth." "Which is?" "That man has been a ghost for 4 years, going through the motions. Surviving, not living, but when he looks at you," Angela's eyes softened, "he's alive again, and so is his daughter." Claire's tears spilled over. "I'm scared." "Of course you are. Love is terrifying, especially when the stakes are this high." Angela reached across and took Claire's hand. "But you know what's worse? Regret. Spending the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you'd been brave enough to stay." Claire covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. Angela stood. "Sophia told me something once. She said, 'Love isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and choosing it anyway.'" She set a card on the table, a phone number written in neat script. "That's my number. If you decide you want to fight for this, call me. I can help." "Help how?" Angela's smile was grim. "By making sure the people who threatened you understand that you're not alone, and that touching you means going through me." "Why would you do that?" "Because Sophia would have wanted me to." Angela moved toward the door, then paused. "And because that little girl deserves a fighting chance at happiness. So does her father, and so do you." She left. And Claire sat there, staring at the card, her heart pounding. Across the city, Dante sat in his office, a glass of whiskey untouched on the desk. Leo stood across from him, arms crossed. The number was a burner, untraceable. Dante's jaw clenched. "So we have nothing." "I'm still working on it, but whoever it was, they knew what they were doing. They wanted her gone." "And it worked." Leo paused. "You should have told her the truth about what we're doing, about the plans to get out." Dante's head snapped up. "What good would that have done?" "Maybe she would have stayed." Or maybe she would have gotten killed waiting for me to follow through. Dante stood abruptly. I did the right thing. Did you? Because from where I'm standing, you just pushed away the best thing that's happened to you in years. She's safer without me. She's miserable without you. So is Bella. So are you. Leo stepped forward. Dante, I've known you a long time, and I've never seen you give up on anything. Don't start now. It's not giving up. It's letting go. It's cowardice. Dante's eyes flashed. Watch it. No, you need to hear this. Leo's voice was firm. You've spent 4 years punishing yourself for Sophia's death. And now you finally have a chance to live again, to give your daughter a mother, to have something real. And you're throwing it away because you're afraid. I'm not afraid. Yes, you are. Leo's expression softened. You're afraid that if you let yourself love her, you'll lose her too. But Dante, you've already lost her. You pushed her away, so what's the difference? Dante's hands curled into fists. Because Leo was right. And he hated it. That afternoon, Isabella sat on her bed, arms crossed, refusing to speak. Dante sat beside her. Bella. Silence. I know you're upset. More silence. But sometimes grown-ups make decisions that... You let her go. Isabella's voice was small but sharp. Dante closed his eyes. It's complicated. No, it's not. She finally looked at him, and her eyes were red from crying. You got scared, so you let her go just like you let Mommy go. The words hit him like a freight train. Bella, that's not. You didn't fight for Mommy. You just let her leave that night, and she didn't come back. Tears streamed down her face. And now you're doing it again. You're letting Miss Claire go, and she's not coming back either. Dante's throat closed. Sweetheart. She was the one, Daddy. Isabella's voice broke. I told you, and you didn't listen. She turned away from him, burying her face in her pillow. Dante sat there, his heart in pieces. His daughter was right. He hadn't fought for Sophia. He'd let her go to that gala alone, even though she'd asked him to come. He'd been too busy, too distracted. And he'd regretted it every day since. Now he was doing it again. Letting fear make his decisions. Letting the woman he loved walk away because he was too afraid to fight for her. He stood slowly and walked to the window. The city stretched out before him. Millions of lives, millions of choices. And for the first time in 4 years, Dante Morty made one that wasn't about survival. It was about love. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Leo, I need you to find her. Already done. I'll text you the address. Dante grabbed his coat. Where are you going? Leo asked. To do what I should have done the first. Time. Which is? Fight. Claire was still sitting on her couch, staring at Angela's card, when her buzzer rang. She frowned and walked to the intercom. Hello. Claire. Her heart stopped. It was Dante. What are you doing here? Her voice shook. I need to talk to you, please. She hesitated. Every rational part of her brain screamed to walk away. But her heart had already made the choice. She buzzed him in. 30 seconds later, there was a knock on her door. She opened it. And there he was. No guards, no armor, Just a man in a wrinkled shirt and worn jeans, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. Claire's breath caught. "I'm sorry for what I said, for pushing you away, for making you think you weren't strong enough." He stepped closer. "You're the strongest person I know, Claire, and I was a coward." Tears blurred her vision. "Dante, I can't promise you safety. I can't promise you a normal life," his voice broke. "But I can promise you that I will fight for you every single day. And I will do everything in my power to build a life where you don't have to be afraid." "How?" she whispered. "I'm getting out." His eyes were fierce. "I've been planning it for months, transferring assets, cutting ties. In 6 months, I'll be clean, completely out of the life." Claire's eyes widened. "You're serious?" "I'm serious. I'm doing it for Bella, and I'm doing it for you." He cupped her face in his hands. "I love you, Claire, and I don't want to lose you." Her tears spilled over. "I love you too." "Then don't give up on us, please." She looked into his eyes and saw everything she'd been too afraid to hope for. The future, a family, a love worth fighting for. "Okay," she whispered. His entire body sagged with relief. And then he kissed her like she was the air he needed to breathe. 3 days later, Claire walked into the penthouse with her heart in her throat. She'd agreed to come back, to try again, but she knew the hardest part wasn't facing Dante. It was facing Isabella. Dante met her at the door, his hand immediately finding hers. "She's in her room," he said quietly. "She hasn't said much since you left." Claire's chest ached. "Does she know I'm coming?" "No, I didn't want to get her hopes up in case." He trailed off. "In case I didn't show." He nodded. Claire squeezed his hand. "I'm here, and I'm not leaving." Something in his eyes softened. "Thank you." She took a deep breath and walked down the hallway. Isabella's door was cracked open. Claire knocked gently. "Bella." There was a pause, then a small voice. "Go away." Claire's heart broke. She pushed the door open slowly. Isabella was sitting on her bed, arms wrapped around her stuffed unicorn, her face turned toward the wall. "I said go away," she repeated, her voice thick. Claire sat on the edge of the bed. "I know you're mad at me." "I'm not mad," Isabella's voice trembled. "I'm sad." "I'm sad too." "Then why did you leave?" Claire took a shaky breath. "Because I was scared." Isabella finally turned to look at her, her eyes red and swollen. "Scared of what?" "Scared of loving you and your dad so much. Scared that something bad would happen. Scared that I wasn't strong enough to stay." "But you came back." "I did." "Why?" Claire reached out and gently tucked a curl behind Isabella's ear. "Because I realized something. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you're scared and you do it anyway." Isabella's bottom lip trembled. "You really love us." "So much it hurts." A tear rolled down Isabella's cheek. "I thought you didn't want to be my—" She stopped, unable to finish. Claire's throat tightened. "You're what, sweetheart?" "My mom," Isabella whispered. And just like that, Claire's heart shattered and mended all at once. She pulled Isabella into her arms, holding her tight. "So, baby, I would be honored to be that for you, if you'll let me." Isabella clung to her, sobbing into her shoulder. "I missed you so much." I missed you too. Claire kissed the top of her head, tears streaming down her own face. And I promise I'm not going anywhere, not ever again. They stayed like that, wrapped in each other, until Isabella's sobs quieted into hiccups. When she finally pulled back, she looked up at Claire with watery eyes. You promise. I promise. Isabella studied her face, searching for the truth. Then, satisfied, she threw her arms around Claire's neck again. I love you, Miss Claire. Claire's voice broke. I love you too, Isabella, so much. When they emerged from the bedroom 20 minutes later, Isabella's hand firmly gripping Claire's, Dante was standing in the hallway. His eyes were wet. He'd heard everything. Isabella ran to him. Daddy, she came back. He scooped her up, holding her close, but his eyes never left Claire's. I know, baby, I know. And she said she's staying. I heard. Isabella pulled back to look at him. Are you happy? Dante's voice was rough. Happier than I've been in a long time. Isabella grinned. Then she wriggled out of his arms and grabbed both their hands. Can we have dinner together, like a real family? Dante looked at Claire. She looked back, her heart full. Yeah, Claire said softly, like a real family. Dinner was loud and chaotic and perfect. Isabella talked nonstop, making up for days of silence. Dante made his grandmother's pasta recipe, and Claire helped, badly earning teasing from both of them. You're supposed to stir it, not declare war on it, Dante said, smirking as Claire wrestled with a wooden spoon. I'm stirring. You're stabbing. Isabella giggled. Miss Claire's not good at cooking. Hey, Claire pointed the spoon at her. I make excellent cereal. That doesn't count, Isabella laughed. And Dante just stood there, leaning against the counter, watching the two people he loved most in the world tease each other. For the first time since Sophia died, his home felt like a home again. After Isabella went to bed, after another story, another hug, another whispered, I love you, Claire and Dante stood together on the terrace. The city glittered below them, alive and indifferent. But up here, in this moment, the world had narrowed to just the two of them. Dante wrapped his arms around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. Thank you, he murmured into her hair. For what? For coming back, for giving us a chance. Claire laced her fingers through his. Thank you for fighting for me. I'll always fight for you. They stood in comfortable silence, the night air cool against their skin. Then Claire said, Angela came to see me. Dante stiffened. Angela Romano. Yeah, she told me about Sophia, about how you're planning to get out. He exhaled slowly. I didn't want to make promises I couldn't keep. I know, but Dante, I need you to know something. He turned her gently to face him. I'm not asking you to be someone you're not, Claire said. I'm not asking you to erase your past or pretend it doesn't exist. I just need to know that we're moving toward something better, together. His hands framed her face. We are, I swear to you, Claire, I'm building a life we can all live in, a safe one. How long? 6 months, maybe less. I've already started transferring everything, cutting ties. By the time Bella starts 3rd grade, we'll be out. Claire searched his eyes. And you'll be safe. As safe as I can be. It wasn't a perfect answer, but it was an honest one. And that was enough. She rose on her toes and kissed him, slow and deep. When they pulled apart, Dante rested his forehead against hers. "Move in with us," he said suddenly. Claire's eyes widened. "What?" "Move in, not as the nanny, as," he paused, his voice catching, "as part of this family." Her heart hammered. "Dante, I know it's fast, but I also know I don't want to spend another night without you here. Neither does Bella." His eyes were fierce and vulnerable all at once. "Say yes." Claire's throat tightened. 1,000 fears rose up, 1,000 what-ifs. But beneath them, all was something stronger. Love. "Yes," she whispered. Dante's face broke into the most beautiful smile she'd ever seen. He lifted her off the ground and spun her, and she laughed, really laughed, for the first time in days. When he set her down, he kissed her again, deeper this time, full of promise. "I love you," he murmured against her lips. "I love you too." 6 months later. The house was smaller than the penthouse, a brownstone in Brooklyn with a backyard and a porch swing. But it was theirs. Claire stood in the kitchen, flour on her cheek, attempting to bake cookies with Isabella, who was now a seasoned expert at taste-testing batter. "More." "Chocolate chips, Miss Claire." "Any more and there'll be chocolate chip cookies with a side of dough," Claire teased. Isabella giggled. Dante walked in from the backyard, sleeves rolled up, dirt on his hands from planting the garden Isabella had begged for. He stopped in the doorway, just watching them. Claire looked up and caught his gaze. "What?" she asked, smiling. "Nothing," but his eyes said everything. Isabella ran to him. "Daddy, look, we're making cookies." "I see that." He ruffled her hair. "They smell amazing." "That's because I'm helping." "Obviously." Claire walked over, wiping her hands on a towel. "How's the garden?" "Good. Tomatoes are planted, basil, some peppers." He slipped an arm around her waist. "Might actually have a real garden by summer." "Might actually have real cookies by tonight," Claire countered. He grinned and kissed her forehead. Isabella looked between them, then announced, "You guys are gross." "Gross?" Dante raised an eyebrow. "Yeah." All kissy and huggy, but she was smiling. "Well, get used to it," Claire said, pulling her into a group hug. Isabella squealed and laughed, and for a moment they just stood there, 3 people who'd found each other in the most unexpected way. A family. Not perfect, not without scars, but whole. That night, after Isabella was asleep and the kitchen was clean, Dante and Claire sat on the porch swing, wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars. "You ever think about how we got here?" Claire asked softly. "Every day." If Isabella hadn't walked up to me that day in the park. "I know." Claire smiled. "She told me once that I was the one. I didn't understand it then. And now." She looked at him, her eyes warm. "Now I think she saw something we were too scared to see." Dante tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "She's smarter than both of us." "Way smarter." He pulled her closer. "You happy?" "Happier than I ever thought I could be." She paused. "You?" "Yeah," he said, his voice thick. Yeah, I am. They sat in silence, the swing rocking gently. Inside, Isabella slept soundly, her stuffed unicorn tucked under her arm and a photo of her mother on her nightstand. And outside, under the stars, two broken people held each other and marveled at the life they'd built. Together. 1 year later, on a sunny Saturday in May, Claire stood in their backyard wearing a simple white dress. It wasn't a big wedding, just close friends, Angela Romano, Leo and his wife, and a handful of people who mattered. But standing at the front, holding a small basket of flower petals, was Isabella, wearing a lavender dress and the biggest smile Claire had ever seen. Ready, Dante whispered beside her. Claire looked up at him, this man who had once been a stranger, then a mystery, then the love of her life. So ready. They turned toward their guests. And Isabella, unable to contain herself, shouted, I told you she was the one. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Dante grinned, Claire's eyes filled with happy tears. And as they spoke their vows under the open sky, surrounded by the people they loved, Claire realized something. Love didn't always come the way you planned. Sometimes it walked in through the most unexpected door. Sometimes it arrived in the voice of a lonely little girl who saw your heart before you even knew it was ready to be seen. And sometimes, if you were brave enough to say yes, it became the greatest story you'd ever live. So where are you watching from? And what did you think of Claire, Dante, and Isabella's story? Drop a comment below. I love hearing from you all. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotional stories like this one. See you in the next one. Red.